Hey, welcome back to Comer What's Up Enterprise podcast. I guess I should say happy St. Patrick's Day. Where's your green?
I've got greens like on my wrist or something, a bracelet. Just believe me.
Oh yeah, okay, that's the one I used to use at school. You can't pinch me. You don't know what green I have on.
Right? Green
Yeah.
undershirt.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, happy Friday. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're at listening to this in the world today. So, again, I have Robert back, who we had an awesome, interesting conversation last time we spoke. So much to cover, so little time, but lots of things are happening in this world. That's for sure. Right. Lots of things from a technology space, from a financial perspective. We know things are going on, a couple of hiccups in the banking industry that were I'm sure could ripple out and impact us. And on What's Up Enterprise, here we explore the latest in technology, data, trends, and other opportunities within technologies, where we get to interview some of the best leading experts in technology today. And we get to cover all these things and how new technologies might impact where a big enterprise is heading or what's your next move. And I was telling Robert earlier before we jumped on live here that a lot of customers I'm talking to right now are looking at SAP S4 as an enterprise transformation. But also, when that's occurring, data transformation is just as big. So if I'm going to move over to S4, what do I do with all my old data? What's the plan of attack? And at the end of the day, what's the real possibility for me? At least over 25 years, I've heard people talk about the total cost of ownership. But also, what is the value? What's the real end game? If I have all these different technologies at my fingertip, what's my next move? That's a big question.
Yep.
And I think what makes it even more challenging is that sales and marketing are getting more sophisticated. They're leveraging artificial intelligence to hit hot buttons with executive teams, executive management. So, depending on who came through your door this week or over the last few months, may be dictating your priorities. And I don't know if that should be the case or not, but it's certainly something to look at and explore. I think there's a lot of topics we could cover. We've only got 30 minutes, so I always have to watch the clock. But I think we should at least talk about this change, right? So SAP came out and announced Datasphere, right? Not
Right.
even that long ago, we are all talking about, oh, you should really consider C data warehouse cloud. And gosh, 3 years ago, I remember when we were talking about SAC as it's not ready for prime time, blah, blah, blah. But now we have people that are implementing that and lots of choices, Robert. So, what are your thoughts? You're right in the middle, you're in the trenches
Yeah.
implementing all of these cool initiatives. So,
Yeah. So the Datasphere announcement, right? That was really interesting from uh going back like SAP, right? SAP has all of the core data for an enterprise. If you financial, HR, supply chain, everything like that. And it was always what you could do with it. And SAC, you could get those real time analytics. But then, if you, from an advanced analytics perspective, it was trying to integrate other sources, ancillary sources of data that large organizations use. Like you said, marketing, I'll have data from third party sources, trend data, market share data, other sources of finance. If you're a
non
AgTech company,
data, is that what you're talking about? Non SAP data?
non-SAP data. It's all ancillary because you have your core ERP, the core functions of running your business, but then there's these things that add color, the things that may give your business with analytics an edge. You may find answers that others may not have by integrating these two major sources of data,
Okay,
SAP
don't
and
let me
non-SAP.
forget. I heard you mention ag tech for a second. So we're gonna get back to that. So
Yes.
because I think there's some interesting plays there. But go ahead.
But going back to Datasphere,
Yeah.
it's an interesting announcement that SAP is acknowledging you from an analytics perspective. You need a space to combine SAP and non-SAP data, and you need to do it with less friction. And it's cool. It's another option. As we know, working in this industry, there are many tools for every part of a data engineering, data analytics initiative. So the fact we have Datasphere, but then as we have our SAP Plus option,
Yep.
which is cool. You can use Snowflake to do similar data integration, data modeling of these core SAP data with non-SAP data.
Yep. Yeah, I think, this one common discussion over the last few months has been these sales teams that are coming out and talking about these options. They're very compelling. And hopefully they've done good demos that are realistic. Sometimes these demos are more futuristic.
For
And
the possible.
yeah, the art of the possible, which is good though, because it gets people to start to really think through the different models. But something that came up on one of my calls today was the fact that when you have so many different vendors coming in and you have revolving doors of consultants and even sometimes new employees, so they're coming from maybe another industry or another company like industry, the challenge is these are all factors that you're now having to make a decision around. So, how do you prioritize that? This is the case. You've got all these companies coming at you, but like you said, now we have SAP recognizing that there's a huge opportunity to really look at your core foundational data, but then all things outside of that. What can we tell clients out there that are being bombarded and really having to evaluate all these different platforms and strategies? What can they do so that they don't feel overwhelmed, and what can they really expect right
Yeah.
now?
In my experience, that goes back to knowing yourself and your company. And it's what are your company's goals? Start at the basics. What is your company vision and your goal for the immediate term? And then
Right.
understanding your maturity level. And when I say maturity level, it's from a data and technology perspective, because I've seen it all. You have very large companies that run very well. They're traditional companies. They're good at their business, but they want to take their business to the next level. And how do you do that? They hear the data analytics, they hear these wonderful tools. So let's just throw this tool at it. It's got tons of horsepower. Let's do that. And you have to have a certain level of data. This is what the vendors come in, Nolan's tool. But you have to have a good level of data quality
Yeah,
and,
no
dare we
doubt.
say, data governance to,
Okay.
to feed into that. But like you're saying, there's so many options. It's really understanding like what gets you the initiative, the inertia to implement a next level data analytics strategy. And that could be business different for every business.
Right.
We know because we live this day in and day out, and we can recommend some options, but we have to know your particular business to be able to recommend those options. You have to get in there and work with you. That's key.
Yeah, when you have so many options, though, I feel like people get involved in these projects, and before they're even done with the option that they selected, then you have these vendors come out selling, and you've got this next greatest
Right? The
tool.
next iteration.
Oh no, what we're implementing is not even ready for this next step. So this is the real paradigm that I see is that I don't know, being an implementer for the last 25 years, I've heard people say, does this ever end? Like, when do we stop implementing? Do we ever get to go live? And yeah, I think the other factor that comes up is that vendors do start to put on, hey, support dates. We're only going to support this now till 2025. Or I've heard some new dates because of the pandemic. They're getting some relief. And now big companies are saying, oh, we're going to support things out to 2030. So sometimes that's the driver. Some of the main drivers are support. I think some of the other main drivers are there's a sense that if we move to cloud, we can lower our total cost of ownership and having to worry about scalability as data grows. Because one thing's for sure happening. This is one thing that we notice and why we get business is that the data volumes continue to grow.
That's facts. Yep. That's a
Fact. Just video data alone, massive growth. But you've got some experience in the ag tech industry and particular experience with geospatial. So maybe we could talk a little bit about some of that stuff that I believe that the ag industry can benefit from that does have value to other industries immediately also. The geospatial stuff is very interesting right now, especially what's going on within our own climate and our own spatial where we're at. So maybe you could
Yeah,
talk a little bit about that and how to refine where we're headed. What can we prioritize if we're ag tech? Since
that is an interesting topic because agriculture, it's one of those critical industries. It kind of is in the background.
just a little bit
Yeah,
critical.
and it's getting more critical. The more
Hey,
the world population grows, the more accessible land, available land. These things are becoming more important. Water is a big
water.
topic. So that's what's always been interesting about this industry to me is you have all the components of a traditional enterprise. Like
Yep.
farmers still need to manage their costs. They still need to make a profit to keep going. They still have to be planning. They do more planning, I would say, than others even because they have to think crop cycles 3 years
Right.
ahead. What seed am I going to use? So geospatial is where am I going to put? And then you can really dive deep from an agronomy perspective, which is like the understanding of agriculture and really how to optimize it. So you have all your core like ERP to really take
Right.
where are my costs going and what am I getting paid?
Sure. Basic to run the
Basic,
business. But then
yeah.
you have some other things generating data, right?
You have a ton of other things generating data, and we can turn this into whole other discussions. But I'll just go high level right now. It's like you have IoT, you have weather data. Like I've seen farmers; they become some of the best weather experts when you have a hurricane coming imminent down on your crop, and you need to understand whether you're going to harvest now or what's going to happen, and is it going to hit? Is it not going to hit?
Man.
So weather data, IoT, and when I say IoT, that's a topic itself because sensors in the field, monitoring temperature, soil moisture, light, sensors on the tractors, streaming data of everything a tractor is doing with its engines, temperature, its direction, as in whether it's on track from a previously defined geospatial navigation. Google Maps tells you where to go. Well, think about these tractors. You can tell
Oh,
it where to go
yeah.
in
Interesting.
centimeters of precision
Wow.
because you need that precision to be able to do what you need to do for your row crops without damaging the crops. Like the
Mhm.
tires need to fit and not run over the
Oh,
crop
that's pretty
itself.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like I'm saying, like Dave, we could turn this into a whole nother
A whole nother
discussion.
episode for sure. But none of that sounds like SAP data. So what do I do?
That's the thing is that's our bread and butter is like, all right, what do you want to see from these? What are important from your weather data and how does it relate to your SAP data? More than likely you have a material. That material, it could be a seed, a fertilizer mix that you're applying to your seed in the field once it's planted, chemicals to protect it from pests and weeds and things like that. Those all have costs. You
Right.
want to know as a farmer for this particular seed variety of whatever I'm growing corn, soy, wheat this was the best mix. And then it gets interesting because it's different from where you are geographically. If you're in the Northeast, you're going to have a different reaction and different concerns than someone living in the Southwest,
So
right?
what's interesting to me is in 1998, that's when I got started in SAP. I thought that the vision that I was shared, P, was that all those things were integrated in SAP, and I could just ask the question, hey, so in the next 6 months, when should I plant or what should I plant based upon the weather, based upon the cycles, and also based upon the orders and at the rate which my sales team are out there. This is the vision that I had when I was looking at SAP back then. I was like, oh, yeah, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, fully integrated data. I remember SAP showing the executive cockpit, right? And that's what I envisioned is someone got to sit down and ask these questions, that those kind of questions. I have all this data. I know my soil richness. Now I know my orders. I know my employees. I know my supply chains, my distribution channels, all that. So all I have to do is hit a button, right? Or no?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that's becoming more of a reality today? That's what I thought was happening. I realized really what we were doing is setting that foundation for that because it was only looking at SAP data. But now we have those foundational components of the data and everything else. Google Analytics, video data, geospatial. You can go on and on. You got audio, video, just
Tons
about
of
anything we
data.
want.
You have tons of data, and that's the thing. We're very data rich, but how do you get to knowledge, I guess you'll say? Because there's a big difference between
Actionable.
I've got, yeah, piles of data. I've got tons of data. Tying it together to get to insights, that's a challenge. And we could go into going back to data modeling and understanding what are the key business entities in those data and what are the answers we're trying to solve. But I think what you're going to is what's going to be interesting here in the next couple years is if you can get to a good quality data set, data
Yeah.
model and input, and then you have these tools like ChatGPT 4 now, right? Where you can speak to it in natural language. So speak to it in English.
Yeah. He has NLP, natural language processing also.
Yeah, there's a couple tools out there.
Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
been promoting it, the ability to type it, but you have to do some setup. Now you have companies already they have the API for ChatGPT 3. So you see corporations tying that in. ChatGPT 4 is just a
I thought I saw
magnitude higher.
Azure or just released, right? ChatGPT for the Microsoft suite. So now it's fully integrated into my Word documents.
So it's interesting. You see a little bit of fear in the comments because there are these jobs like copywriters and these things
Oh
that
yeah, that was the
were
list I was
done.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, they're done by a person. I put a post out there on LinkedIn. It's like for skilled workers, knowledge workers, and stuff. They're interesting in that I don't think of it as like competition necessarily. Like not yet. We got some years to go, but augmentation. It's
Yep.
almost like having right now at the
Yeah.
level, it's like an assistant or an intern that you can bounce ideas off of and feed.
I think it's just the greatest opportunity to enhance our own intuition, our own humanness. I think these things work fantastic, all this AI and all this data, but you still have to have someone like ourselves to think creatively.
Yes, there you go. You have to have most of the experience and the boots on the ground and that really core
Exactly. Farmer
human.
experience, right? 60 years ago, this is how we used to do things and
Oh,
fill the
100%.
soil and go, it's not the right time. That
And
stuff's still
that's
valuable.
Shane Thomas writes a good article on tech trends, and that was one of the latest ones was AgTech adoption, and then that's been my experience too. Like, you can create the coolest mobile app that'll automate some of the operations, but you really got to work with the people on the ground, and that's how you get adoption. Is you augment their day to day, you make their life easier, you reduce friction to do their job. You
Right.
can notify them of spray events happening because those are really important critical events in the field and safety issues too. Like there's a
Safety.
whole thing. Don't want your people in the field, but automate the field operations and then at the same time be capturing those data and feeding it back into your data model so you can run quick analytics. It's that augmentation, and that's where I see Chat GPT and these things going. Don't think of it as like Terminator, Skynet. I think it was more of the computer on like Star Trek where they go, oh yeah, like, hey, I got this question. And by the way,
Yeah.
make me a
I've seen posts from some very bright AI or AGI people, and they're talking about how if people like us can go in there and help organize the data, bring it all together, where now you can ask questions like I could ask you. Hey, Robert, you're an excellent farmer. I know you've been walking these fields for the last 30 years. And I could ask you, what do you think if we actually planted this there? These are conversational type of queries where this new artificial intelligence, we're reaching a point where we don't have to code or put a new column in or set up the data anymore. If we can get the data there correctly, then I'm just asking the question. I'm not asking you to code it. Maybe the thing goes out and does the code for you so that you can ask it. All this data is coming together in a way that we can just have a conversation about where I'm supposed to go next so that we can be the most efficient over my competitor.
that's always been the goal is getting the data, engineering pipelines, feeding from the systems, core and ancillary, so that you can ask questions. We always did it through, back in the day it was OLAP.
Yeah.
Now we've got Power BI, Tableau. But the idea is how to reduce friction so that financial analysts, supply chain analysts can ask the questions that come up and answer them the quickest way possible. So I've heard it say like the speed of thought.
Do those people have anything to really worry about right now? How far are we from really implementing that? Just opinion, right? Guess based on the way
No,
you people cleaning up their data.
there's a good runway there because it's about
Yeah,
analysis. Analysis is about interaction with the business. You still need that human interaction, but it
I
goes
agree.
back to augmentation. Now, copywriters and things like that, just the fact that you have this massive access to all this natural language documentation. But from a supply chain analyst, a business analyst perspective, it's more about helping,
Yeah.
using these tools to help
Yeah, you
do their
augment
job.
or optimize like things that they're intuitively have. There's already a skill set. We're just going to enhance that with some of this
We're going to
intelligence,
enhance it.
right?
And then
Yeah.
it's a common phrase that you're doing 80, 90% to get your data there. So if you get your data to a good, clean point, and now you're asking new questions, that's really what analysts are always supposed to be doing, right? Is dealing with those ad hoc questions.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room there.
Here's what I'm going to say. We only have 3 minutes, and there's a few topics here that I can see we can really carve out and dive a little deeper into. But I think the value that a team like the Comeric guys out there bring to the table is their roots, their foundations is years and years of the actual transactional system, your core R3, EC, and now even S4. So having that knowledge also coupled with a lot of our experts come from different industries. So they have the knowledge of industry, but also now bringing that together with our experience and knowledge over the new data warehousing cloud tools. So I think just rounding this out, there's so much that can be done. But I believe that where people will really start to gain true insight to action type things, it will come from experts like yourself, Robert, who have that base foundation of the transactional system within SAP, but also understand all these little nuances in different types of data that are non-SAP that come together, and also what's growing. I don't think how people are collecting data is going to stop. Every day I see someone coming up with a new way to collect data on something.
Yeah,
So, it just in wrapping it up, I just want to thank you again for taking 30 minutes out of your day to talk to me about what's happening, but also just to know I've talked to you a lot. I can't wait to go into more detail. I'm glad that I get a chance to work with you because in order to get to what we're saying is the next step, I believe they're going to need individuals like yourself who understand the business, especially in the AgTech business, the transactional software and
right.
all of the opportunity tools that the world's presenting us now as
I agree.
industry experts. So,
Yep.
but yeah, thanks again for your time. And I can't wait to really look at this one and say, I know some people out there listening right now that are going to say, hey, how come you guys didn't go a little deeper here? So get that on paper. And what we will do on our next one, we'll invite a couple of guests that are specific to some of these areas. And we'll just have another fireside chat like we're doing now.
I like it. That'll be good, Dave.
All right, man. It was good seeing you. I look forward to our next one. And if you guys have questions, definitely leave them in the comment section or reach out to us. Let us know if there's some other topics that you'd like us to go deep in.